methods of teaching, but very effective. Oh, slide's already. Okay, good. So when we started this project, I asked myself, well, what is service learning? And honestly, I thought it was a fancy word for volunteering. However, it is much more. Service learning is civic engagement and scholarship. Basically, it is active learning integrated with community service, but with instruction and reflection. So basically what we can say is service learning is, sorry, don't nervous. It's classroom content fused with going out into the community, getting hands-on experience, real-life experience. We'll talk about benefits throughout the presentation. However, because of those benefits, that is why service learning has become more and more widespread, especially in the United States. And at this point, over half of all college and university students are participating in some sort of service learning. A lot of times it is also a requirement for graduation. So what does service learning need to have in order to be successful? Successful not only for students, but also for the faculty and for the members of the community. Well, faculty, faculty and community members, first of all, before anything starts, they need to set a common goal. They need to set a common goal, what they want from this experience. It's not enough just to set the, students out, go volunteer. No, they need support, they need guidance, they need reflection. This faculty needs to follow up with them after their experience in order to make it worthwhile, and they need to link it with the classroom content. Yep. And if all of these things happen, that is when service learning can be successful. That is when it has high impact on academic skills, skill development, high retention rates. That is when good relationships are built with the faculty and with the community around the schools. And that is when the ones in need are helped. And that is when service learning has high impact, not on civic responsibility now, but also for future, for the future of the students, and they carry it on into adulthood.
Great. Okay. I did research the history of service learning, and what I found was there's consensus that during the progressive era, where you had the social and political reforms in the United States, you had women pioneers like Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Starr start the Hull House in Chicago. And what you find was that they took a new approach to how to help communities, where instead of, okay, let me just throw you money, I'm going to go into a community, I'm going to live with these people, I'm going to find out what their problems are, and I'm going to help them. And then you had educator John Dewey come in, and he went to the Hull House, and he saw what they were doing, and he said, that's how you teach people. This is how you make transformational leaders. And so with his writings, you began to see a link in service learning. And what he wrote was where education has to be linked with experience. You can't just do memorizing facts. Children or students need to go out into the communities. And from that, you start building a democratic community. If students are aware of what's going on in their communities, maybe they will become a voice for their communities. Also, through social service and social learning, you will have social activism. And finally, he said that with reflection, you will create social transformations in society. And of course, his ideas, we start seeing it now, even with your presentation, people are really using that cycle of learning. And then, while doing research, we see in the 1960s and 70s, and I always look at what's really going on in history. We know Vietnam War was going on, a lot of social, global changes, and that's when you see this dramatic increase of higher education, creating programs like the Peace Corps, or Volunteers to America in Service programs. And you see, like Maureen, you had said, when people were going to school, what can we do to help and everything in that generation? And of course, in the 80s, you have institutions really taking this idea where you have campus compact, campus outreach, and you just see this very dramatic growth. And then what does the federal government do? In 1990, they passed the National and Community Service Act to sit there and say, we will mobilize Americans to help go out there in their communities. Oh, sorry. And I had my clicker.
All right, so once it's actually at the college, you get to actually look into and see what the college experience with service learning really is. First off, it enhances the students' academic performance, right? Because now they're taking lecture and they're actually using it. Everyone's talking about how, you know, we're boring the kids with more and more papers and all this other stuff. Well, make them use it, you know, practice makes perfect. So now we're taking theories and they're applying them. Also stepping outside the restrictions of the classroom. This is gonna foster critical thinking. They're gonna do it on their own. And also they're gonna have to work with other people. So now you have them not only using the stuff, but now they have to put up with what someone else is saying too and actually make it work. And then you have the effective communication, like I just said, working with other people. We all know of those students that sit in the very back of the classroom. They don't want to participate, they don't want to do anything. They might not be so hesitant if they were given the opportunity to actually go out and use it. Sitting in a classroom and answering some questions, that's not necessarily going to tell you who's the star student. Also, it fills that gap, which has been mentioned a lot, that gap between this is college and this is the job. How do I get there? You know, showing up at the job with the tools. Well, I'm sorry, but most of the college degrees are cookie cutter. They're not going to do what you need for that job anyways. You just need that diploma to even apply for it. Also, service learning, it shapes a student as a leader. Because that student that's sitting in the back of the classroom, the one that doesn't want to talk, the one that doesn't want to raise their hand, that student could be a leader, and you don't even know it because you don't see it yet. You don't see them in action. When you see them in action, that's when you see whether they're listening or not whether or not they raise their hand. Also, it engages the students in problem solving. So they're at this service learning, whatever it is. It could be an internship. It could be just volunteering and learning how, you know, we deal with all these animals that are in, shelters and stuff. It could be anything. But you have a problem, and now you're addressing it. So you're actually going to try to solve a problem, and if you're passionate about it, maybe it becomes your whole career. Maybe it actually defines a part of you, a part of your life. And finally, you also gain the perspective of other people's standards. We like to sit there and pretend like everyone thinks the same thing we're thinking. And that's not true. That's hardly ever the case. You get put into a place where everyone comes from different places, everyone has different jobs, and you're supposed to work together. Well, my definition of something's not the same as your definition. And that can be even placed in a more broad question. Like, for instance, in America, we have poverty. It's not the same poverty as everyone else is experiencing in other countries. Everyone has a different perspective because everyone comes from a different place.
All right. So I started researching service learning in connection with Greek organizations, fraternities, and sororities. When I first started, honestly, I didn't know what to look for, what to really expect. So with Dr. Halfbostig's help, I started looking at different fraternities, you know, all over the United States, different sororities, what they're doing. And I found out that really they have a large impact on how students interact with. It is a requirement for students even to join these fraternities and sororities that they have to engage in service learning. So studies have shown that students, compared to students who are part of a Greek organization, compared to students who are not, are 22.4% more likely to participate in volunteering and 29% more likely to participate in service learning. So there's definitely a connection going on there. Students that that are a part of these organizations, not only do they learn this mentality that service is important, but also a lot of times students are just not aware that there's these channels out there, and Greek organizations, they provide them these channels. They tell them, look, go to the soup kitchen, this is something you can do, go to the shelter. A lot of times students just aren't aware of that. So why, except for, why is the service so deeply embedded in Greek organizations? Well, what they want is not only for students to gain more awareness of themselves, but also of their community. They want to increase civic responsibility, and they also want to satisfy the learning experience, because other studies have also shown that students that do participate in service learning are more likely to finish the first year of college or university than students who are not.
Well, I did the point in time homelessness survey interview, which was very interesting and very enlightening. And the point in time homelessness survey, it's basically the Department of Housing and Urban Development provides funding to states and organizations to end homelessness in the community. And when you do this count, and from Ms. Lyons, when I interview her, is that they actually go out into the communities and find these populations of homeless people. And they assess them by what they call the Vulnerable Index Service Prioritization Decision Assistance Tool. And so they ask them, how long have you been homeless? Is this a chronic homelessness? So you will see individuals be able to find a place to stay and then come back out in the community. Is it just you, or is it a family? Are you a veteran? Do you have maybe an addiction problem? What's keeping you out here on the streets? And with this survey and this information that they collect, they are able to determine the severity of a person's homelessness. I think the most powerful thing she said, she's like, but depending on this scale, we know if this person is going to die on the streets or not. And so when she said this, I realized how important this survey was. And at Sheperd University, being, of course, a student there, I had Dr. Howard Bostic introduced, asking students, do you want to volunteer and help these organizations go out there? I had another professor ask us the same thing. And what I found is when students go out and actually go and interview these people, your perception of what a homeless person is completely changes. The majority of times it could be just a family that has lost a job and I can't pay the rent. It's not this drug addict on the corner that couldn't get his life together. And when you start seeing children, then when we go through our college experience and wherever our job professions are later, the policies and decisions that we make in these jobs, maybe we'll realize maybe that will affect someone negatively. And in regards to, in our community in the Martinsburg area, and of course it's different counties in West Virginia, that the Telemon organization, the West Virginia Coalition to End Homelessness, other community leaders, and of course Sheperd University all come together to help this yearly survey so they can send these results and data to organizations to sit there and say, okay, I want to end homelessness, here's my statistics, what are we going to do about it? And then also I had a great experience of doing the Manual House Soup Kitchen. And that was, I'm new to Martinsburg area, so I was not familiar with this organization. And I remember going out and doing the interview, and I did not know it was a community-based religious organization. To me, I was the type of person, you say soup kitchen, okay, I had a different vision in my mind. And so when I went there, I was like, oh, okay, this is a worship service. Okay, well, that's wonderful. And when I got to interview these ladies, these 4 women that said what they found in a previous church is that they had done away with that service that we see in all faith, the making, to serve and to help people by meals, by the communionship you get when you're eating, and you're worshiping at the same time. And so they had founded the Emmanuel House based on the principle to help serve others on that lack economic, a spiritual position. And so when they provide these services to individuals, about 50 to 100 of free meals, they also provide an opportunity for individuals to gain access to maybe resources in the community. Maybe you're not aware of certain programs. They also help with certificate information. Some people, unfortunately, with the literacy rate, they maybe not be able to fill out to get birth certificates. And so they help with that. They also help with providing a type of sanctuary. And so if you're a homeless person and you might feel society has sort of outcast you, out there to be on your own, this place is where you can feel a sense of hope, a sense of peace. And so with the Emmanuel House, they depend on all the different factors. And it's not just, people that are at the Emmanuel House. It is Sheperd students. She said community business will come and help us. They will paint the walls. They will provide the food. You also have other religious organizations coming in to help volunteer. And that's what I found very important. I think sometimes in society we say different religions fraction us, when in all actuality you see that even if you're from different religions and different faith backgrounds, people do come together to help each other on a common good basis.
All right, so I'll tell you a little bit about the challenges of service learning. When I did my research about this part of the entire topic, I really couldn't find any disadvantages for the method itself. The problem was how it was implemented. A lot of times, the main reason why service learning wasn't successful is because of time. It was a lot of times short-term activities, and they didn't benefit anyone. They didn't benefit the student anything from it, and a lot of them in studies show that they see it as a waste of time. For communities, it doesn't help either. It's such a short time span that most of those students are sent into the experience that they really have to waste their time to train them, to show them what they have to do, and then they're gone. And they can't even, there's no time for them to actually help them out with their skills. The main problem also was that there was a lack of participation and a lack of communication with faculty and the community. Basically, most research showed that the students went there, did their time, and the faculty showed no guidance, no support. The community wasn't aware of the goals that need to be met by the school, the academic goals. They only, used the help. So really, that was the main problem. And the issue because of this is that a lot of times service learning is simply confused with simple volunteering. Another issue was a liability question. Who is responsible? Is it the community or is it the school? So a lot of times if that's not resolved before the experience starts, it can put a strain on the relationship between the school and the community. And then finally, there's the problems, the challenges of the students themselves. Because of the lack of support and guidance, they don't learn anything from the experience, so they have trouble using their time or seeing where the learning effect is supposed to come from. They're basically wasting their time, which is already restricted with academic responsibilities, jobs, and family. So that is just altogether the main challenge of service learning, which could be resolved if it's planned and organized correctly.
All right. I'm speaking for Cassidy. So there was a survey, and it was distributed to two classrooms. two classrooms who had students who were invited to participate in the point-in-time homelessness survey, the soup kitchen, and about 5 or 6 other service learning opportunities that existed in the Martinsburg area, Hedgesville area, and Shepherdstown area in West Virginia. So students had to complete this questionnaire, and the questionnaire assessed their perceptions about their beliefs and participation in service learning projects in the major of sociology. So this was specific to people who had who were taking a sociology class or who were sociology majors. And so we used a series of statistics to really examine the situation, how they felt about service learning as a whole, and also address the question of should service learning be a requirement in class, or should it be something that they just volunteer to do? So we found that a majority of the students in sociology, 58%, had already began to volunteer actively in the community. I believe that that is because most of them had taken classes with me before, and they were already into it, and I really make it a priority for them to engage in some type of way. But 12% said they participated often, and the others said that it was, occasionally. But we found that upper class students were more likely than the underclass students to actually engage in service learning. So that brings up a really interesting question, to ask. Is it with maturity that you, throughout the college experience, that you realize that now you need to step out in the community and do these things? Or is it something to do with the coursework in sociology that then, as they learn more, they begin to find out the connection between community and participation? So I think that's a question that needs to be explored a little further in the future. But most interestingly, 72.9% reported positive feelings about service learning. So it was something that students were interested in doing, that they didn't have a problem with, and they were ready to engage. So we've heard during the conference some ideas that maybe this new generation, maybe they were disconnected or they were floating in some type of way. Well, we can say that in the field of sociology, they may be floating, but they don't have a negative feeling about doing it. So if there's some positive energy there, that's a point. Whereas faculty members, we can get in there and try to encourage them or influence them to do it. Because if they're not saying no, we know how to get them to, we can get them to go. And a majority agreed strongly that the service learning made the classes more enjoyable, which has a direct connection with retention. They come, they don't miss class, and they want to see how these things connect, and they want to be there. And that's an issue that, nationally that we want to address. So if we want to keep them excited, then this is a tool that can be used to get them interested, to get them ready to participate and feeling very positive about the relationship between people across different class groups. I think this was an excellent experience. I thank you all so much for inviting or having the students here, and this was a rich experience for them from being able to create this information via poster, to get up in front of this group for their first time and present. Cassidy wrote some things down here. I think I can speak. I can speak on behalf of a diverse and motivated team that Dr. Howard Bostic brought service learning to Sheperd University. We are all non-traditional students. No video games. We read on our own. I text worse than my grandma. We are a decade-ish older than the majority of the students sitting around us. We have our own families, full-time jobs, and a lot of laundry to do. This is a benefit for us because we have experience that can't be taught. The problem is, what about the students sitting around us? Service learning at the college level needs to be a requirement, but it also needs to be perceived of as an opportunity. Yes. So when I introduce service learning to the students, I don't introduce it as something that is an extra credit activity. I tell them, don't go for credit, Go because it's an opportunity for you to develop and engage personally. Go because you can get something out of this, and so can they. It is an opportunity. And so when people look at service learning as a requirement, they think you're forcing people to help the poor. They don't understand that you can help students understand how to communicate and help people. Some people don't even help their own families. We've lost touch. And so service learning can be an opportunity and a tool, and I think Cassidy wanted everybody to know that. So thank you.
Thank you.